Hello and welcome to another episode of Myths and Stories, a Destiny 2 lore podcast. This time, we are going to be continuing the trend we started with the last Micah episode, digging into some of the dialogues tied to the collectibles around the Pale Heart area. As I feel like some of these are not they're definitely not as in your face. And with the ones we're going to go over today, there's actually no triumph or anything to really point you at them. They're more of just a random discovery. And there are a lot more of these dialogues than we uh, thought there were when we first started the endeavor of running a whole bunch of syst missions to listen to all of them. We're originally thinking like, oh, there'll be one per syst mission. No, there is more. There is many
Many,
more.
many, many more. We're also I'm really excited about this because while we were doing this, Myth and I couldn't find anywhere on the internet that somebody had actually delved into these, uh, or where they were even transcribed or anything like that. So we might be the first to actually like poke at these and kind of like dissect them, and I'm excited for that.
Yeah. Now I will say, I because I was looking at their YouTube channel for the Luzaku dialogues, which we're going to be talking about as well, either in this episode or the next. I saw that like 2 days after we did all of our hunting and transcription, the Destiny Lore Vault YouTube went around and got all the videos of all of them.
Son of a bitch.
That's usually how it
Okay,
goes.
was
Uh,
the first at time, is not first now.
but it is a really there's a lot of really cool information in these. So for those unaware, when you do the syst missions, which are the missions that you're originally directed to from Micah, as the like go collect a ghost, go do the overthrow event in an area, and then go heal that ghost by completing one of these syst missions. And this like the moth infested cavern or the sword dance, where you have the hive sword through all of it. And there's six of these, two in each kind of main area of the Pale Heart. Uh, Hidden away in each of those syst missions is a feather. Now these feathers appear to be the same as the like hawk feathers that you find as part of the Triumph. Uh, where like the last six are in the Dual Destiny mission, and then the other 54, I think. I forget if it's 60 total or 50 total, but
55 total.
okay. So the other 49 then are all spread throughout the Pale Heart. For those feathers, those 55, when you pick them up, that's it. You just pick them up. That adds +1 to your triumph. You keep going about your day. When you pick up one of the feathers in a syst mission, it unfortunately does not count towards the triumph, but it gives you dialogue similar to the Visions of the Traveler orbs that you find for the Kvostov quest. These feathers, however, are repeatable. You can load up that sys mission over and over and over, and that feather will always be there, and it gives you a random dialogue. And I believe we came down to 10 different dialogues that you can get. Uh, and so like there's a potential to get a whole lot of different dialogues here, all addressing very similarly kind of memories from the traveler. But rather than being interpreted by Micah in this case, they're being interpreted by Mithrax. And there's some really interesting things here, and some fun comparisons that we can draw to lore books, primarily the Book of Sorrow, um, around some of these memories. So, say we're going to go through, there's no real order to most of these. There are three of them that are direct sequential from one another. We're going to save those till the end. They're going to be the last ones we go through. But the first one we're going to start with is one that is pretty common knowledge at this point. This is just them really hammering this idea home, um, and that is surrounding the ghosts. Uh, so, with each of these feathers, when you collect it, Mithrax makes a little statement at the beginning saying, "It is as though I am seeing a sculpture, and the artist's intent shines through. I will attempt to interpret." And so that little intro happens for each of these, and it's reinforcing that idea of this is not necessarily a one for one translation. This is Mithrax like experiencing these pieces of memory from the traveler, and he's just trying to verbalize them, interpret them in a way that they could be understood for us. So all that is to say, even Mithrax is saying, don't take everything at 100% face value. This is, a translation of a translation kind of thing. But, so the first one speaks about ghosts, and it goes like this: pinpricks of light, thousands upon thousands, all falling at once. Each is a ghost. They are pieces of their maker, each wreathed with hope against hopelessness, constellations of sacrifice. But when one passes, a part returns to the whole. And Micah kind of chimes in. Ghosts return to the traveler when they fall, as do all those who are of the light. In the end, we are all made complete. And that's that first entry.
So yeah, like you said, very very kind of driving home that point of anything made from the light returns to the light.
Yep. Yep. We've seen that theme everywhere. Is a major theme of the campaign. And this kind of mirrors uh the memory that Micah got also around the creation of the ghosts. Um where Micah had a dialogue that described the creation of the ghosts as like a martyrdom, as
Yep.
a last ditch effort. Constellations of sacrifice, I think, were used in that one as well. So I other than this like connection, everything in the light returns. The other kind of prevailing theme seems to be that the creation of the ghosts was a harmful gesture for the traveler. Like it,
Harmful conscious gesture, I think.
yes,
Like the fact that they describe it as martyrdom, like that's like the traveler did this on purpose. It
yes,
wasn't like a because I think at one point in time we were kind of theorizing like what if something the witness did to the traveler like caused the ghost to
hmm
be formed or whatever. This is everything we're seeing now is very much a conscious thing happening from the traveler, that the ghost it created the ghost on purpose as just kind of a last ditch effort of like, this is my final stand, like I don't have anywhere else to go, we'll see what happens, like play around with hope and faith. So
yeah,
um yeah.
and yeah, I feel like this was said at one time. Maybe it was the intro to D1. Maybe it's me misremembering, but I feel like at one point in time, the reason why we originally were on that thought pattern of like, this was something that happened to it, was that it was a description of like the traveler was wounded, and from that wound came the ghosts.
I think that was the original D1
I think so too.
intro. Well, and we also thought about it too because we're trying to figure out why the witness could talk through our ghost.
True. Yeah.
But I think that is just more of a like I think it might be a two-part thing now. Like, a because the witness did have access to the light at some point in time as the precursor race, it has a better um I don't know, a better understanding. It has a high level of understanding of the light in the first place.
Yeah.
It just chooses to use dark as its main like ability.
Yeah.
But then half of that being dark is a construct of consciousness. So the ghost being a conscious thing, like maybe that's how it was able to like poke around in there.
Yeah. Maybe so. Still some questions there as to exactly how that relationship, was happening, like how that takeover was happening. But yeah, until we know more, best theory at the moment is just like, well, they had a lot more time with things than we ever did, and they found more out, I guess, and
Yeah,
were able to manipulate that knowledge.
that's where I'm at with that.
So the next one we're going to read actually kind of relates to that exact scenario we were talking about, regarding the traveler like making its stand here. Uh, and so this one, uh, Mithrax says, Guardian, this impression is unlike the others. It is a towering pillar. It is dense and strong, a world third from its sun, where the gardener sows its many gifts. And Ikora kind of chimes in and says, Earth, this is our story. Mithrax continues, something pursues, casts a shadow over the system, but the gardener does not move. And Micah finishes it with, it is done with running, and so it remains. And that's the end of that little vision.
Yeah, I truly think that like, we always try to figure out like why did the traveler choose Soul System, and I think we hit it in some of these recent episodes. At one point in time, I think Myth, you said like, what if there are no other systems? What if Soul is the last system in the galaxy, in the universe, and whatever? Like I do truly think of the traveler creating the ghost as a genuine last stand, as a genuine just I've tried everything. I've gone to multiple systems. I've tried to give people items such as like the harmony and the ecumene and try to give them like the gift mask to be like, hey, use this to help fight, and still not really getting fully interpreted correctly by those different races, and then coming here, still not even really getting interpreted correctly, giving another golden age, and then just being like, well, I've got nowhere else to go. Well, this is kind of the last thing. Like, let me tear pieces of myself off, make all these little baby me's, that being the ghost, send those out into this system, and just wait and hope and pray and
Yeah.
it very the ghost very much I'm starting to think more and more of this. The ghost very much really was that, just like a gesture of hope on the traveler's part, to say, I don't want darkness to win. I don't want, and I say darkness, I don't want the witness to win. Um, and do whatever the witnesses was trying to do, and we know that now to be like the unmaking of the entire universe. Um, so in an effort to prevent that, it's like, well, I'll shut down. I'll go into like power saving mode and rip all these little pieces off me and just see what happens.
Yeah. I described in the previous reading from Mithrax as well as from Micah as, a hope against hopelessness, like
Yeah,
a true last ditch effort. Um, Now, we don't know the state of the universe outside of the soul system in Destiny. It's possible we are the last bastion of life, period. I
it's kind
I
of bleak
also
though, isn't it? Like
it
that's,
is, it
I mean, the
really is.
universe is huge, but I mean, you think about how long. the witness had the traveler. I mean, they had the traveler for eons. They had a very long golden age,
Mm-hmm.
and then had ages of time where they were messing around with the veil, looking for the veil and messing around with the veil, and then ages of time while they were becoming the witness, and then ages of time while they pursued the traveler, and then like we know at least 1 billion years for the hive to run rampant through the universe.
Right.
So I mean, that's a lot of time. They could have covered a lot of ground.
Yeah. I the other thing though, is the mention that Mithrax says this impression is unlike the others. It is a towering pillar. It is dense and strong. And that kind of brings me back to one of the theories we had talked about before, and that being like maybe there is truly something innately different about humanity that
Sure,
allowed the traveler when it got here to I mean, as far as we know, no other race has had a speaker, although we could argue Mithrax it kind of fits that bill as well.
sure,
Um, but perhaps there wasn't someone as attuned as Mithrax back when the traveler was on Reese. I and it might be that it came to Earth and not only was able to grant gifts, but for the first time ever, based on what we have seen elsewhere, somebody could hear it speaking. Not
sure.
not maybe exactly one for one, but someone could finally begin to communicate with it. And based on what we have seen, I don't think it had that experience before then. And so perhaps in its like its thought pattern could have been like I have been traveling for eons and eons, the entire time since it left the witnesses people. And this is the first race, the first group of beings I have found that I can actually communicate with in some way. Maybe they can do what no other can do. Like
Yeah,
maybe because they are attuned to the light in that way, even if it's only a few of them that are attuned enough to hear me, but maybe because the race in general has the capacity for that, they will be able to wield this power unlike anything has before.
yeah. I like it. I like it.
So I don't know. Couple, or it could be a combination of it all. You know,
Sure, sure.
uh,
That's the best part about Destiny is we just don't fucking know.
we don't. Hopefully, Frontiers lives up to its name, and we go elsewhere and find out some
I'm
of this
telling
stuff.
you, man, that idea that they brought forward of like, what if we were the navigator? I mean, what if we were the navigator?
Yeah, I wanna navigate the dreadnought somewhere. But
I'm gonna just do laps around Jupiter or something.
but no. So speaking to Reese and a world that the traveler did not stay at. We have another reading here specifically about Reese, where Mithrax says, "Another world. This one with oh, Reese, my home. Micah, I cannot. You do not need to. We know what took place there." In which case, Keitel breaks in this time and says, "We do not know all. Report the battlefield, Mithrax. Look without seeing." And so Mithrax continues, "Yes, the planet sighs with sweet ether. The Elixni breathe deeply and take deeply of the great machine's gifts. And then something arrives, and the great machine runs. There is nothing more." And that's the end of that vision.
So obviously referencing the world event on Reese, and it was interesting to me. Um, Mithrax, uh, I don't think, and I'm pretty sure we've come to this conclusively. I don't think Mithrax has ever seen Reese. I think Mithrax was born during the whirlwind,
Mithrax was born during the Long Drift.
during the long drift.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Post whirlwind, long drift.
Yeah, but has
Uh,
never seen Reese.
right. But to actually see it, like, I mean, the traveler's been there, so this would be a memory of the traveler. Like, I mean, the traveler would, and especially the way the traveler talks and shows visions and stuff like that. Like, to be able to see it so vividly, I like. Obviously, we can see why Mithrax would be a little like, I can't report on this. Like, no, this is too emotional. And then I like Keidel's like, Keidel's very much just like the very straightforward. I think the Cabal really are a straightforward
They
people. I feel
really
like
are.
it's they're very much everything is at face value. There's no I can't say there's no depth, but like it's they're very easy to kind of like talk to and interpret. And she's just like, no, don't worry about what you're seeing. Just report. Just make a just report what is there. Um, so yeah, like it obviously like for Mithrax to see that, and then there was another interesting uh, lore entry that I remembered before we started today. There's a bunch of books that you could get from Archie, the little exo dog that you were chased. That was during Into the Light. You were chasing all over the soul system and tracking him down, and you get a little lore entry for him. As well as little items. So if anyone still has those items, every guardian is running around with an Ahamkara bone right now, and there is something wrong with all of us. Um, he one of the books was like each of the books like describes different people, and one of them was about the Elixni, and the little title entry to that was we have finally found the great machine, and it was Mithrax after Chelchis, and Chelchis being the last of the House of Stone that stood before presumably Oryx, because Oryx, one of the guns you can get from Kingsfall is the Doom of Chelchis, which is literally the bones of said Exo made into a gun. So yeah, that's presume like it was interesting to kind of see that like little bit there, and then to think, wait a second, does Mithrax actually know of like Mithrax would know of Chelchis because they would tell stories about that. The Elixir were very much a storytelling people, um, but like Mithrax wouldn't know of Reese, like wouldn't actually know what it looked like. So to be shown a I'll call it a one for one, like this is what it looked like.
Yeah.
That would be a very different experience for Mithrax.
Yeah, and there's a couple things worth pointing out. So, regarding Chelchis, because that assigned Mithrax after Chelchis, it makes me wonder if Mithrax's original house was the House of Stone. If like that's where
Oh
he's
shit!
descendant
Sure,
from.
sure.
That would be kind of a cool loop around. Like the House of Stone is who defended the other Elixni to allow them to leave the Whirlwind, and is now also, their descendants are the
They're
ones
defending.
that are defending the Great Machine now.
Yeah, yeah. I like it. I like it.
So that's kind of neat. But yeah, actually there is so there's a couple of areas across the Pale Heart where it gives you the opportunity to listen to a memory from somebody. You can go back to the gravestones, like outside Zavala's house, and listen to a memory of Zavala and Sophia there. There's a statue of Savathun. You can listen to the memory of Savathun, I think, discussing with the witness. I forget exactly which one that is. Um,
Same area where you find the dual destiny mission.
yep, yep, same area. There is a memory of Mithrax as well that you can find, and it is of him having. It's a memory of him having the thing that every parent goes through when they have an infant, is little baby Ido not wanting to let him go to sleep, like crying through the night, essentially.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, and so he, in that memory, kind of like presumably, goes to her room or however they're set up, and to try and soothe her back to sleep. He says, I'll tell you some stories, the same ones my mother told me of our once homeworld Reese. And so that a kind of confirms that like he wasn't there. He only
yeah.
knows what he was told by his mother and other Elixni. And B, I wonder if this was kind of the start of this very early storytelling about this place she's never been and never will be, at least not in the form it was. If that's kind of like what started Ido down the path of eventually becoming a scribe.
I think so. Yeah, that's too on point to not be.
But returning back to the reading in particular, so there's a couple things here. So Mithrax says the planet size was sweet ether. Now we've known from other lore cards that like ether was just in the atmosphere of Reese. And so all the Elixni were essentially what we consider captains now. That's like a full grown healthy Elixni is someone is a captain. Uh and anything that is less than that, a vandal or a drag or whatnot, uh they only don't look like that because they are literally don't have enough food, enough ether to fully mature. Uh the thought though, and the reason that I'm wondering is because this sentence is specifically like all one sentence. It says the Elixni breathe deeply and take deeply of the great machine's gifts. And I wonder if ether was not plentiful in their atmosphere until the traveler came and perhaps terraformed it to be that way.
I believe it. Yeah, that's. I mean, the traveler would do something like that to help. We think of any type of golden age or anywhere the traveler's been. Everything is done is to help like prosper the
Yeah.
the the beings that it comes across. I mean, human lifespan tripled. Uh, the ecumene were given, or the harmony were given, the gift mass, like everything that the traveler has done anywhere it's gone has been a helpful act to try to like extend the life or make better the lives of the people that it comes across. So yeah, I could believe that.
Yeah, so it's an interesting thought that like at one point in time, perhaps the Elixni were a more, I don't know if feral is the right word, but perhaps they were just
Less evolved.
dregs and vandals. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the traveler came, in my mind, like did a global scan and it was like, oh, well, there's this chemical deficiency in this race that shows intelligence. If I just make it so that deficiency isn't there via their atmosphere, I wonder what they'll become. I and it just
I'll
did
just
that.
I'll just quintuple the amount.
Yeah. So don't know for sure that's what happened, but it is interesting that they draw this correlation between breathing ether and taking a gift from the great machine.
Sure.
But another race, I guess, subset of a race that has been gifted by the traveler, much to our dismay, is the hive. And there is a entry about the hive here. So in this one, Mithrax says, there were once flickers of playful light in the endless ocean, but they were smothered by the lies of the deep. They became glutted with tithes and the whispers of worms. And Savathun kind of breaks in and says, "Ah, I've been waiting for this one." Mithrax continues, "Yet one rejects its worm, reaches up, and the gardener reaches back." And Savathun cuts in again. "Tell us about the sculptor, Mithrax. What feeling seeps from this piece?" And Micah joins the call and just says, "Tell me it's pity." And Mithrax says, "No, it is love." And Savathun, "Of course it is." And that's the end of that vision.
Whole universe runs off of Savathun bullshit. Yeah, I mean, obviously talking about the tithing and the worms. That's the whole like feeding system of energy transfer from like the lowest thrall to the highest wizard, or I guess all the way up to the worms themselves. Um, and the one that rejected is Savathun. Like she was the one um, the whole. I feel like the whole time. It like the more and more we learn about her, the more and more it seems like the entire time that she was following along with her sisters. It just she kind of had her own plans anyway. Um, but yeah, the one that kind of rejected the idea of the worm and was like, no, this can't be the right way. Like, there's got to be something more. And then was gifted the light through the traveler is Savathun. Um, so yeah, it's yeah, and of course Sabbath. I like the idea like Savathun saying, well, what feeling is this? And then Mike is like, well, it's got to be pity. Like the traveler's got to feel sorry for them, right? Like it was supposed to go there first, but then essentially the witness beat the traveler to the hive to fundament, and then was just like, neat. Now I can corrupt these people, and now I have my own army. I can do the same thing you can do, only worse. Uh, and then when Micah comes back and goes, or when Mithrax comes back and says, no, it was love, and it's just this like it's this odd like, well, shit, okay, I guess the traveler really doesn't hate the hive. Weird.
Well, and this takes us back to the discussion between Micah and Cade. Like, yeah, when they were discussing like why did the hive get the light? And Micah saying, well, they were chosen long before us. Just the witness got in the way. I and Cade having that like, you know, emotionally I can't reconcile that, but academically, like just on paper, I can understand that that's kind of the traveler's deal is when it sees the potential for good, even if it is the smallest sliver, it still makes that bet. It still sees that as better than abandoning that potential.
Sure.
And in also, if we think back to the like, we can't truly understand the traveler. Like, conceptually, the traveler's a being so far removed from our reality that the concepts of, I mean, like the concept of worship, just not even a thing for the traveler. Like it's having to try and learn what that even means. I and I'm wondering also if, because it is such a removed being from our reality, if the concepts of morality as we know them are not the same for the
Sure.
traveler. I don't know if the traveler necessarily knows or correlates like moral good and bad.
I mean, you think about it, morality is just a point of view.
I truly, yes, like no villain is, every villain is the hero of their own story.
Right.
Like,
They're convinced they're doing what is right for, themselves, their people, their whatever. Like, it, it, so in their eyes, they are doing good, and the other side is the evil. But then, I mean, I like obviously like the most the first one that comes to mind is like Jedi and Sith, and it's
Sure.
like, well, the Sith are doing what they think is correct for the Force and for the universe. Like in their eyes, they are good. Like, but then the Jedi are evil. Like the Jedi are spreading this crazy ability to use magic essentially throughout the universe. Um, so yeah, like it's a from the traveler's point of view, good and evil may not equate to the same as what humanity equates as good and evil. To what the Cabal, the Fallen, anyone that we've come across equates to good and evil. Now, I think there is a line to be drawn. Uh, Unmaking the universe is bad. I think.
Well,
Like,
from the
I
traveler's point of view, I don't again, I don't think it necessarily corresponds like good and evil. I think it thinks of creation and destruction.
okay, sure,
And
I could see that.
I think it could recognize that the hive as a whole, under the control and influence of the witness, were a force of destruction and
Sure,
therefore needed to be like were one of the things that guardians were granted powers to operate against that destruction. But if one of those destroyers of their own volition decided to come to the traveler and say, I don't want to destroy anymore, I want to create, I think it would be overjoyed at that. Like
sure.
that's its whole deal, right?
That's the
Is
goal. Like that's the like, yeah,
so I think it does not have this sense of like of good and bad, of right and wrong. It's just this like either you are a destroyer within the universe or you are a creator within the universe. And
I like that. I like that a lot. I really like that idea of like it's not even a point of view of good or evil. It's a point of view of destroyer or creator. And if you're a destroyer, then I don't like you. Like you're not bad. I'm not for you.
yeah, and it is one of those things. And again, we just don't know because we can't like sit down and have a discussion with the traveler.
I
But
want that so bad. Just a little
oh, me too.
fireside chat of like the traveler just appears as whatever in the Pale Heart, and we're just like at a campsite. We're like, so how you been for the last I don't know how many years?
Yeah, I just want to sit down and be like, all right, traveler, what's your deal?
What's
Like,
your deal?
what is your philosophy? Tell me why do you do the things you do?
Do it
Uh,
as a we could do it as like a Jiminy Glick. We'd be like, so Mister Traveler, what is your deal?
uh, but yeah, so I think that is where this sense of love, of fondness, of acceptance comes from, because they're seeing a destroyer that is putting down those tools of destruction and is instead saying, I want to use your gifts, the gifts you are going to give us anyway. I want to accept that now.
Yeah.
Uh,
Do you think Savathun has that level of understanding of that interaction as well?
I don't know.
Of like does she understand the idea that the traveler doesn't have this idea of good or bad, it just has this idea of destroyer or creator, and then for a previous destroyer to come to it and accept creation as a better lifestyle. um I don't know, you think Savathun knows what she did? She plays it off like she knows.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if she knows it in those terms. I don't know if that's the exact like thought process on her part. I think she 100% knows that the traveler is one of these like beings beyond our true comprehension, and that
Sure.
I think she would at least know, do not assign the moral constructs of our people to this being, because it it is comprehending so much more than that it likely cannot follow this kind of like base social construct.
Yeah.
But yeah. Uh so the next one, and actually the next few here, are going to be about races that we have not directly dealt with, but have heard about in other places. Um, so the first, Mithrax has this to say: There is a world of mist. A song echoes up through the gases below. 6-armed creatures have joined the gardener and sing in harmony. They are among the first. They build great monuments across 52 moons. They strobe for joy when their first ships launch towards distant stars. But this is a moment of loss. All the colors of the creatures fade. They fall silent. They die. Micah breaks in. Mithrax, do not lose yourself to grief. It is not yours. Yes, Micah. Thank you. This light is strong. I must be strong in turn. And that's the end of that vision.
So like when I first heard this one, I thought it was referencing harmony. It's like, these things live in harmony. But then the whole 52 moons thing, like that's clearly fundament. Which then I was like, okay, well, I mean, this got to be the hive. And it's like, no, the hive weren't like gifted the traveler's gift. Like the traveler showed up and was like, oh shit, I'm too late. Let me get the fuck out of here. So this is like a race that existed on Fundament before the Hive, is what it sounds like.
Uh,
Um,
Unsure as to if they started on Fundament.
oh, sure, could have been on one of the moons.
But this is a race that we see referenced in the Books of Sorrow and is within the same system as Fundament.
Oh
Uh,
shit.
so if we go back to the Books of Sorrow, verse 2, section 4, titled 52 and 1. This chapter of the book says, the 52 moons of Fundament host a star-faring civilization far more sophisticated than anything you have encountered so far. Taux's ship fled towards the large ice moon, where a species of bony, 6-armed cephalopods keeps their icy capital. Savathun has named them the Ammonite. They are eager to grant Tauix asylum.
Tauix being the betrayer.
The betrayer of the Krill. Yeah,
Right.
betrayed the Osmium dynasty to the helium drinkers down in
Right.
Fundament.
Okay.
Uh,
So the Ammonite. Okay.
yeah, so
What do we know about the Ammonite?
I think the Ammonite fit best here. Um, we don't know much outside of they were starfaring. They lived on one of the icy moons of Fundament. We do know that the Traveler was also one of the moons of Fundament. You know, that
Yep.
52 and 1, it was the one. Uh, and it seems that the Traveler then had been to the Ammonite and granted them gifts, and that is perhaps why they are a very advanced starfaring civilization at this point. Some interesting things we glean from this memory, though. It says they are among the first. That makes me wonder if this is one of the first races after the witnesses race that the traveler gardener went to.
It's got to be.
Like perhaps Fundament and the traveler, being around Fundament is like maybe it was the first stop. Like it left the precursor
Well,
race and stopped at Fundament and started hopping moons to places that had civilizations.
so I mean, you think about Fundament and 52 Moons. Who, like, there's already so many moons there, and the Traveler itself kind of looks like a moon. So it's like, oh, well, it's just another moon that's, nobody discovered. So maybe it was like a hiding space at first,
That's true. Yeah.
and then found this Ammonite people and was like, oh, okay, well, let me see if I can like talk to them. Let me see if I can ask them for help and be like, hey, this big bad thing is chasing me. It wants to unmake the universe. Uh, what can I do? And then this Ammonite people, like, I mean, they're described as a cephalopod, which, correct me if I'm wrong, that's a crab,
Crab would be crustacean.
crustacean. What the hell is a cephalopod? And why do I know that word?
Cephalopod is like octopus, I believe.
Okay,
Um,
so
yeah, like octopus or squid.
squid like people.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so it sees this as at least an intelligent enough race to be granted things like space travel. Um, and then starts doing that, starts doing the thing that the Traveler does, and starts possibly terraforming all the other moons, and like now these this race has new abilities, new I say abilities. It's not like they're running around with like the light. They're not running around like casting chaos reach on shit and like putting wells down and everything. Um, but like new technologies and stuff, the ability to take to the stars. Um, but then still like I almost feel like it might be like a lesser intelligence race that doesn't like cool, they were granted starfaring, but now they're like, what do we do with that? Like they because the fact that they were still on the moons, and I'm assuming they were wiped out by the hive when the
Yes.
hive took to the moons to start like creating war moons.
So the hive originally it was the hive in pursuit of Tauix
Right.
wiped wiped the Ammonite out.
Wiped out the
Yeah.
ammonite. Yeah. So like the fact that they didn't really either a didn't want to run or didn't really care to run. Maybe I don't know. Yeah, that could have been like the first like idea of the Traveler going, hey, I can help people advance. I just need one of them to be able to understand me and listen. So I shoot, I don't know, man.
So I could potentially see this happening a couple ways. A starfaring does not necessarily mean they had the capability to run. I mean, technically Guardians could be considered starfaring, but we can't leave our solar system very easily.
That's true.
Uh so starfaring might just be that they were hopping around other planets. Or other
Or the other
moons within their
moons. There, yeah,
system.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I could see that.
I I wonder if so it's like, hey, they launched their first ship, but it goes, this is a moment of loss. Um, I could see this as being like they launched a ship and discovered that like they can't survive outside of their atmosphere. Uh,
That's true.
or the launching of the ship is what kind of like signaled to Tauix that there is a people there,
Sure.
and the launching of the ship was kind of them flagging themselves as being there. Therefore, Tauix fled there. Therefore, the hive wiped them out.
Yep. Yep.
I
It's like a series of unfortunate events type thing.
Right. Now we have some interesting timeline things here, because we know that Rulk, the disciple Rulk, came down and stole I
Mommy
forget what
Seidel.
the name was. Zeidel, yeah. Stole that worm to like tell the other worms, hey, tempt the krill to come to you and make a deal, and essentially to kickstart the whole them becoming hive. Uh that would have presumably happened before the Traveler arrived there, because otherwise I have to think Rook like coming through that system, and maybe the Traveler is just really good at hiding. I don't know,
That's
but
that's where it makes me think, like that idea that there are 52 moons, and it's just like, well, there's 52 other things that kind of look like me. I'm gonna hide out here and pray to God nobody starts counting and going 49, 50, 51, 52, 53. Where the fuck did that come from?
I mean, it's possible. It is possible that Rook just like the Traveler was in hiding, and Rook just did not know it was there when he put this plan into place for the Witness. The other thing that I wonder about is I don't know if the Traveler knew it was being pursued. Like
Oh,
it certainly ran. Like when the precursor peoples of the Witness, you know, A
went to the
became the
veil and
Witness
everything. Yeah,
and
yeah,
approached the Traveler with this like we're gonna hook you into this thing and change reality. Uh,
yeah.
like it ran away for sure, but I don't know if it ran away with the understanding that like those things are going to keep
To chase it.
following me.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and I mean it again. This is one of those like Traveler, just tell me some shit.
Just fucking sit
Uh,
down and talk to me. I
but
don't need
like
this bird hawk bullshit.
it would have known that they had the ability of space travel. I don't know if they became the Witness. I think they became the Witness after the Traveler left. Is
I think
kind
you're
of
right.
where my head is at.
Like
So
Traveler left, and they're like, "Well, great. Now we got to chase this thing down. We're out of our golden age thing. Like we have this veil. Let's become one and chase this thing down and put purpose to the universe."
the Traveler probably left knowing that like okay, they can send ships after me, but I don't think it left knowing that this other grand entity had been created with the sole purpose of hunting it down.
Sure.
And perhaps why there is such a sense of loss around the Ammonite is because they were one of the Traveler's first attempts to like okay, let's start again. And B, this may have been the moment where the Traveler fully understood that like the Witness, in this case via the Hive, is waging war on me and all the peoples I touch.
Sure. Well, and this, I don't know why this kind of hit me just now, but like, does that does that truly mean that, like, we know the Witness found, or the Witness's precursor race found the Traveler in the desert, like buried under sand essentially, and
Yeah.
like uncovered it, unearthed it, and then all of a sudden it's like doing shit. It's terraform. It's like, thank you for unearthing me. Here's an oasis. Hey, I'll make you immortals. Neat. Um, like, what was the travel? Would the Witness have been the first race?
I mean, as far as we know,
Like, like,
um,
like, what would have been like the Traveler's motivations after coming in contact with the Witness's people, or at least after the Witness's people finding the veil, are kind of clear. Like, it's now like, oh shit, run. This thing, this race of people is trying to put purpose to the universe, like, and the way that they're doing it is like removing entropy and finalizing everything and creating this weird universe of calcified statues until it can decide, like, okay, now you'll have a purpose. We'll make you live that purpose for eternity. Um, but like what was its goals and ideas and stuff before that?
we don't have a way
We
to
just don't
know.
know. Yeah.
I mean, all we can take is what we have observed its actions being, you know, up till this point. And
Yeah.
it seems like its main goal is create life.
Yeah.
I mean, it has sentience, it has thoughts and feelings and wants and fears, but we don't. So it has a reason, at least in its own mind. There is a reason for what it's doing. We just don't necessarily know what that is.
Yeah.
I I mean, if we take unveiling at face value, it is purely just
Create
it's
for
in
the sake of
this
creation.
it's in this gamble, right? the winnower and the gardener, and this gamble of like the universe is always going to end in a survival of the fittest pattern versus if granted grace, people will defend one another, and like that on a universal scale. But at the end of the day, we can only speculate.
I know. It just keeps hitting me more and more of like there's so much of a bigger picture going on here than just and the final shape really did kind of like drive it home of like, cool, we beat the witness. Now what? Like now we're just a bunch of immortals running around doing what? And even Crow kind of hits on it when he talks about the aurora pouring out of it like we don't know. We don't know now what. We also don't know like anything beforehand. So like we're in this weird space of like what we've been training and living and dying to fight this war and win this war, and now we've won, or at least we think we've won. Um, Now what? And it's one of those things like to understand, what we're fighting against, what we're fighting for, you almost have to like have a better understanding of what's going on around you. And to me, that understanding would come from what are the origins of the traveler? What is the true like beginning of the traveler, so we can kind of understand what it wants or what it wants to do or what its motivation and goals are. So, but
Yeah.
again, without that, like I don't know that we really have we now we don't have purpose. Now we're the new witness. Shit.
And it all just starts again.
And it
Uh,
starts again. No.
but yeah, so it is an interesting idea here of why go
Yeah.
to the Ammonite? Were the Ammonites somehow before the witness? I don't think so. I think the Ammonite were after it had left the
Yeah.
witness's
Yep.
race. Um,
I see fundament as like a first stop of like a there's 52
yeah,
moons, there's 52 things that look like me. I can probably hide here. And then a quick discovery of like, oh, there's a being of creatures here. Well, I let me see if I can talk to them and get them to help. And then again, that level of misunderstanding, from the being's point of view of like, oh, neat, we can fly now, cool. And then like what you're saying, that level of like circumstance, right? They launch their first ships, and Taux goes, "Neat, a ship. I'm gonna go there." And then, unbeknownst to Taux, like, "Oh, these people aren't as advanced as I thought they were. Shit."
well, I
And
don't
then
I
the
don't
hive
think
show up and just
it's
start wrecking face.
I don't think it's an advancement thing. I think it's
I always think of space travel as an advancement thing. That's
well,
that's just me though.
sure, like the ability to travel in space is advancement, but we technically right now in present day can travel through space. That doesn't make us Star Trek. Like
Oh, that's true. That's true.
there is a
There's
very
level of
large
advancement.
gradient
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah,
I and I also don't know that the traveler, again at this point in time, if we go with the idea of like the traveler left the precursors, I and I think the traveler may have just like washed their hands of it at that point, be like, all right, I'm away from
Oh,
those crazy
sure.
people, and it just went about its business, arrived with the Ammonite, and I don't necessarily think it was trying to be like, help me. I think it was just doing its job. Like it was like, all
I
right,
see what you're saying.
first race didn't work out. Let's try again with this one and see what happens. And so
I see what you're saying.
I don't think it was trying to build them up to be like an army to defend it. I think
Sure.
it was just granting gifts and being like, evolve, prosper, do your things.
Like that, even that idea of an army kind of evolved as the traveler was being pursued.
Right.
Okay. Okay. I'm following now. I'm following. Okay.
So presumably timeline wise, just to really like nail it down, and then we'll move on. Presumably timeline wise, it left the precursors. The witness was formed. It arrived at the Ammonite either before its arrival or during its arrival, and it wasn't registered. Rulk, who had been a witness, who had become a disciple of the witness, in between those two events, came, kickstarted the worms. I'm guessing the witness learned, well, it would have had to, learned that the traveler was in Fundament's orbit and knew of its plans, knew like it was going to go around to every civilization there and uplift them. And so it used Rulk maybe as a covert agent. Maybe they knew the Traveler was there, but they intentionally did not engage it at that point to corrupt its ability to follow, carry that job out. And then the Krill became the Witnesses army, and the Traveler now is now, for I think the first time, faced with armed retaliation against it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it pieces out, Ammonite get wiped out, and now the Hive begin their slow roll over the universe.
I like it.
But so the next one speaks about another race that we have not had a direct connection with, question mark, and not 100% sure that this race is what we think it is, and that is, we are theorizing that these may be Lubrans, um, Rulk's,
Lubernites.
yeah, Rulk's race, the from the planet of Lubre.
There you
Uh,
go.
yeah. So there's not a whole lot of information to go on. All we know is that the Traveler was here very briefly and then kind of left without really seemingly to doing much. So in this one, Mithrax says, "This is only a brief glimpse, Guardian. A long-legged people creep across the landscape, so focused on the treacherous ground beneath their feet, they have no eyes for the sky. The great machine will never know if they dance, sing, if their children sit still by the fire. Their lives are theirs to lead, and that is all. This piece is finished." And Micah chimes in, "What form is the thought? Regret? Hope? I cannot say, and would not guess." That's the end of that vision.
So the couple things in here that like Myth and I were kind of poking at a little bit and trying to figure out like, okay, well, who is this talking about? My first thought, long-legged Rook, greatest Bayonetta legs ever, kicking us off of his little upending.
Yeah.
Um, like that just it just seemed to fit, and so we kind of started digging into that idea. Well, then Myth found another lore entry that kind of says that the Traveler, well, not kind of, it says the Traveler went to them first, and they were just like, and not first, sorry, the Traveler came to them at some point in time. And again, if we're trying to establish a timeline, like if Rulk is a disciple of the Witness, then the Traveler would have gone to Rulk's people first to make Rulk the last survivor, like for the events of the Shattered Sun books to happen,
Mm-hmm.
and then Rulk to become a disciple of the Witness, and now Rulk's at Fundament playing covert op dude. Um, but yeah, Myth, you have that entry readily
Yep.
available?
Yep. So this is from the Shattered Suns lore book, the Provoked chapter. And I'm not going to go through all of it, but the piece that is relevant is we are divided, split by a shimmering orb that appeared briefly in our sky, as if having two suns isn't already crowded enough. What of this shimmering orb? It was before my time. It came, we evolved, it left us with a mess. Those who believed in good progress, and those who didn't. Those who believed dwelled in the city, controlled it, filled it only with the light of the Saphiric sun, an endless day to keep the horrors of night away, revealing the horrors among us. They pushed progress for the sake of the few, while the rest of us took our chances under the alternating suns. Uh, and there's a little bit here where it says, this shimmering orb providing hope and then leaving everything to those who desire control but lack commitment and understanding.
I mean, that's clearly describing the traveler. I feel like that's pretty spot on description of the traveler. The whole idea of hope, the idea of you know uplifting and evolving, and then just leaving. Like, yeah. But it seems like at least from Rook's point of view, like um, he's very resentful of it.
Yes,
He
very
he's
much
very
so.
resentful of it because the people that were then evolved, like they kind of like they now they factionized.
Yep.
Um, and again, like we saw that we see the same thing here on Earth when we had New Monarchy, Future War Cult, Dead Orbit, of like even the Vanguard of like
Sure.
that we need to worship this thing. This thing is granting us abilities and powers and lifespans and technology. Like this is clearly a god, and it's just a level of misunderstanding. And I think the traveler coming to Rulk's people and doing that, and then going, well, they don't really understand what they're getting, what they're doing, and they're not really wanting to um, interact with me. I I'm going to move on, and I'm going to find the next race that I can maybe uplift or evolve or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and then again, that idea of leaving a mess. Now you have a whole faction of like, oh well, we need to power ourselves and empower ourselves by using the if I'm remembering correctly, they started siphoning the one of the suns.
Yeah, I would need to read through Shattered Suns as a whole again to truly grasp it, but if I recall, like yeah, they were siphoning power from one to essentially like do give the city electricity kind of thing.
Yeah, yep. And
Uh,
then everyone outside the city was just kind of like suffering because now
yep,
now there's these times of like endless night where like crazy creatures are roaming and killing off people and stuff. And
yeah,
so like and then you have like at that point in time within a society now you have a level of like power, right? Like now you have the people that have access to this electricity, to this power, to the whatever, and you have the people that don't. And the people with power, the people that are either more authoritative or more what would that word be? Not arrogant, more not persuasive, more pressure. They can exert more pressure.
influential.
There you go. Um, that they can then start using that power to their advantage and start pushing, being oppressive and pushing people out. Which again, Rolk looks at this as a whole resentment thing. He's like, well, it came before I existed, but the stories I heard before I existed, we were perfectly fine. Like everything was great, and now this thing showed up, and now we're a people divided, and now we have everyone hates each other, and so him seeing the traveler show up as a bad thing is an interesting point of view for Rolk. But again, I think this is the closest we have to say like what that vision that Mithrax is describing here is quite possibly Rourke's people.
Yeah. Again, we don't have a ton of concrete to like. We're mostly going off long-legged and briefly in the sky.
Yeah,
And the assumption that Bungie is going to write about things we already know about and not just create a random thing out of thin air.
but as
Uh,
Myth reminded me, they
they
will
do that.
absolutely just create random shit. And then I was like, well, damn it, my whole idea went to shit here.
So can't say for certain, but if we do take at face value that this is Lubre, that does kind of inform us as to our timeline a little bit. So,
Sure.
you know, event number one, Traveler uplifts the precursors. Event number two, precursors try and merge it with the veil and change reality. Event number three, Traveler leaves. Event number four, in the wake of the Traveler leaving, the precursors become the witness. Event number five, the Traveler briefly touches down near Lubre tries to help them and kind of decides like they're like it describes as they're too busy looking at the treacherous ground under their feet than to have eyes for the sky. Like they're
Yeah.
not trying to understand me. They're just trying to use this power amongst themselves. Like the
Yep.
and Traveler leaves in pursuit of the Traveler. The witness is brought to Lubre and brings about its destruction and the disciplehood of Rulk. Uh, Event, I think I'm on 6. The Traveler arrives at the fundament system and begins to uplift the Ammonite. And in the midst of that, I'm assuming, I Rulk goes to fundament, pulls out Zeidel, begins the deception of the worms. I The witness, via the worms, corrupts the krill into the hive. The hive, now using their power, seek to end their enemies, Tauix being one of them. Tauix flees to the Ammonite. The Traveler flees, seeing this militaristic force being put against it, and the Ammonite are wiped out, and the hive then continue on.
I like it.
And where do the hive continue to? But another race we have heard about in the books of sorrow. Again, this is not concrete, but I think there are more clues in this one to inform us that this is talking about the harmony than there are to suggest it's somebody else. But this one goes like this. There are 10 planets, and on them 10 trillion souls. They are falling toward the ruin of their dead star. The great machine, the Traveler, untwists the gravitational fields. It saves them. But the people, they cannot find their way. It builds them a grand beacon, and they bask in its light. And Keitel cuts in. The Traveler is giving endlessly to those who find its favor. Do these 10 trillion perish as well? And Mithrax finishes, Ah, there is no more, only the trace of their song on the cosmic wind. And that's the end of that vision.
So, like Myth said, this one you kind of kind of have to read between the lines, and you kind of have to like be a little open minded on this one, little possibly tinfoily. All right.
A little bit, yeah.
Um, the idea. So the first thought there is there's a star that is possibly going supernova, um, or has gone supernova and is possibly going black hole.
Yeah,
Um,
is collapsing in some
is
way.
collapsing. Yep. Traveler shows up and goes, "Oh, well, I can fix that," and boop, fixes it. Now you have a whole solar system of creatures and planets and people and shit, and they're like, "Oh, neat. Uh, now what?" And the Traveler goes, "Well, here's the thing," and builds them a beacon. I personally am taking that beacon to be the gift mass that was gifted to the Harmony uh, system or race or I don't remember how they're actually described. And the only reason why I'm thinking that is because later on when Mithrax says their what is it, their presence is a song on the wind, and the
Mm-hmm.
idea of like song and harmony and like okay yeah you kind of harmonize when you song or when you sing or whatever, so like I feel like that's pretty close.
Yeah, it just the gift mast being this beacon of light, because the gift mast, if we look back at the books of sorrow, there is verse 5:4, which is titled the gift mast, and it is described as towering above the star system like a monument to treason. It beams with silver light. It sings a radio lullaby made of soothing lies. This is from the hive's point of view. In its light live the harmony, and they are now our prey. Uh, so I there it's coincidental for sure. There's not like any concrete like okay that lines up with that perfectly, but the idea of these people gifted this pillar of light that they bask in its light, and the traveler, untwisting a gravitational field to create a beacon. I think that just lines up really nicely.
It feels too spot on, right? To not be. Again, kind of going back to the idea of like Bungie would give us a story about something that we might know something about, or they just write something random.
Yeah. Either it's the beginning of a story, either it's the beginning of a new story, or it's giving us more info about a story we already know. But I think this one, now the 10 planets, that didn't seem to directly correspond to anything. So perhaps that is just a new little detail. I don't know.
Sure.
Um, because it did make me think of like, I was like, all right, if this isn't the harmony and the gift mast, perhaps it's the ecumene, because the ecumene were a multi species,
Like a coalition.
right? Like it was an alliance of multiple advanced spacefaring species. Uh, and so like 10 planets that could maybe line up there. But as far as I know, and as far as I could find, there isn't anything to suggest that um they had this beacon of sorts within the ecumene. And there's also nothing that specifically says the ecumene were made of 10 planets either.
Sure.
So I feel like the harmony fit a little better than that. Um, but yeah, still a little up in the air. But so that brings us to the final three visions, and all of these are in regards to this precursor race, the witnesses race. And so the first one goes like this: a barren desert stretches from horizon to horizon. A sandstorm rage. Cloaked figures stumble through the dunes. They are starving. The wind whips around them, uncovering something buried beneath the sand. The figures, they look upon it with wonder. They have found their salvation, and they call it the gardener. And Micah breaks in saying, the gardener, the great machine, Mithrax, the trailer, the traveler, they're all one and the same. Is there more to this impression? No. There is an edge to the light. This piece is finished. That's the end of the first vision.
Like I think Micah's pretty on point here. I was I don't know. I was a little skeptical of the idea of the traveler actually being the gardener, but I'm more and more kind of falling into that idea. I was not skeptical of the opposite of that, of the witness. I was taking the witness as being the winnower, and I have been proven wrong. We'll find out in a later episode how wrong I actually am and how much I get to laugh at me. Uh, so yeah, like I do truly think that the I mean, obviously the Great Machine and the Traveler, like we have the people that called it the Great Machine for them to be like, yeah, that's the Great Machine, that's the thing that came to our planet, and we go, no, 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 that's not the Great Machine, that's the Traveler, and them going, yeah, same thing, and we're going like, okay, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, the fact that like we have the people that called it what it is, that now again the term the gardener, the only reference we have is the unveiling books, which for a while there, I think Myth and I were kind of on the same page. Is like we don't really know how much to believe of this,
Right.
but like the more we're finding out again about the winnower, I personally am starting to think more and more that the that book might be more believable than what we previously perceived it to be. Same same concept as like truth to power. Like we always thought, truth to power. Oh, it's just a bunch of jumble of bullshit. Well, then when you start like dissecting it, thinking through, like, okay, maybe it's not a jumble of bullshit. Maybe there really is some truth to this. Um, so yeah, like the idea that the traveler is the gardener, I think is a pretty universally accepted idea amongst a majority of the Destiny community, I think. So yeah, I'm leaning more and more. I'll keep my 99 one. You know me. I got to keep one foot in the possibility, right? I can't fully until I have concrete evidence in front of me that says this is this and that is that. I have to stay at least a little skeptical. But yeah, I'm gonna lean more and more towards the idea that the traveler is the gardener. Again, that idea, it has conscious thought, it has its own wants and wills and needs and stuff, and yeah, I'm leaning further and further that way.
Yeah, and I think an important thing to note is that the term gardener, I I doubt is what the Traveler calls itself. Like, yeah, the
Yeah,
Traveler,
like
but probably doesn't
what does it
call
call
itself the
itself?
Traveler.
Does it call
Uh,
itself the travel? Does it call itself the Great Machine? What
right.
is your name? Sit down with me and talk.
I mean, it may sit down around that campfire and be like, "Yeah, my name is Bob." Uh,
Oh
like,
my
you guys
god.
been calling me all
If
these
it's
weird things.
if the traveler's true name is Bob, I'm gonna lose my shit.
But it's that kind of thing. Like, the gardener is a name that is used to reference it, but is not a name that it gave people as like, you should call me this. It's just what presumably the precursors decided its name would be.
Probably because they saw it gardening, right? They saw it
Right.
tending
Yeah.
an oasis and creating an oasis for them, and it was like, oh, neat. We know that as gardening. Cool. You are the gardener now. Thank you.
Yeah. So it is an interesting, like, I think Gardner, Great Machine, Traveler, I do think they are all in reference to this same thing, but the Gardener, like, again, because it didn't proclaim itself that, it's hard to know if if the subject being referred to as the Gardener in, say, Unveiling is the same.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh
Like this could
Now,
just be they have named it gardener, but not the gardener.
right. Now,
I see where you're going at.
if I take the other approach of like, Myth, you're stupid, keep it simple. Uh this could very literally be Bungie outright telling us, like, the Traveler
hey,
is the gardener.
hey, you dumb shits, pay attention.
Yeah.
We're not actually creating all these random stories. Everything has a point.
Yeah, like, just this could be them outright stating, like, Traveler equals gardener.
You've got guys like us dissecting lore books and shit, and we're like, well, what does this mean? And what does that mean? What if this could mean this? And Bungie's like, no, you dumb shits. This is the gardener. Stop it.
Yeah.
I like
uh,
I like that idea more and more now, man. It's like the parent just like, hey, cut that shit out.
yeah. I'm just gonna tell you how it is. That's all you need to know.
That's all you
Uh,
need to know. That's it.
but but this does continue in another vision, which is kind of part two to this story. So this one goes like this. This is a companion to another piece. What was once covered in sand is now fertile deltas and lush gardens. Hooded figures stand in supplication, but their words are not reverential. Their prayers are questions, demands. Micah cuts in once more. Do you feel a response or the intent to respond? No. Like those hooded figures, I feel nothing. There is only silence. And that's the end of that vision.
So again, I might be being presumptuous, but I'm going to take this as the witnesses precursor people. Um, they found the traveler, the gardener, whatever, and uncovered it, and it granted them, their golden age. We know from Asa's vision, or her little cutscene there, that they were granted, they were in that golden age for eons, and again, that they having so long to do whatever you want and not really understanding why you have so long to do whatever you want, could be a confusing thing. Uh, so we also know from the Entelechy. I hope I'm gonna screw that
The
word up.
collector's lore
The
book?
collection edition book,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That they started using this ability to start creating their own little things. Like they were trying to find out, like, why were we given this? And the more they start questioning, the more they start looking to the thing that gave them that power and go, well, why did you, like, we were starving, we were dying, like, why did you stop that from happening? Why did you grant us eternity, essentially? um and for it to be silent, like, again, like what you were saying earlier, humanity might have been the first race of beings that had the ability to actually hear it. Um, Maybe not talk back, but definitely, like, get the visions of the traveler in dream form and be like, okay, well, what the hell was that? Um, so yeah, like it talks here. The Mithrax talks about, it's this veiled race asking, demanding, like, why did you uplift us? Why did you grant us this golden age and for silence to come back? Well, that's going to start pissing people off. Like, to ask why and get no answer back, like, clearly is going to start, like, different factionings forming within the race of people that's asking this. And we see that throughout the Entelechy. Like, they had different little sects of, like, hey, this is the purpose. This is why we are the way we are. And then other groups going, well, is that really the way we are? Like, and then the one kind of coming back with, like, well, the final shape, like, it should be unknowable, and they're like, or it should be not unknowable, it should be so obvious that it's just knowable. Like, I should just be like, the final shape, and everyone's like, oh, okay, neat, triangle. Um, but other people going, well, if it's so knowable, if it's so just for sure, why do we have to define it? Why do we have to give it a purpose behind it? So yeah, I definitely see this as and Mithrax confirms here it's a companion piece, as kind of like the continuation of, hey, the veiled people, the precursor race was in the desert, they found the traveler, it uplifted them, they started demanding things of it, of, like, again, we don't know as far as timeline, eons is the best we can come up with, but it started demanding things of it. And the traveler going, well, I don't understand this idea of demand or worship or anything, like, I just helped you, like, you, like, that's it. It's and again, I think it's that idea of, like, I just helped you, you should be grateful. I don't even think it's that. I think it's like, I just helped you,
Yeah.
full stop. There's no, like, there's no follow up, there's no, like, I just helped you, and then that's it. That's the end of the thought process for the traveler. No, I just helped you, so you should like me, or I just helped you, so you should worship me, or I just helped you, what do you want? Like, just a genuine full stop of, I just helped you, and then the people asking back, like, well, why? Like, what is our purpose?
Yeah, I think from the traveler's point of view, like it doesn't see itself, and we kind of saw this from the vision Micah got that's around the same time period from the traveler's point of view. That like uh saying these little gardeners are such careful stewards of fragility. but then they begin kneeling. They plead, beg, demand, I do not know what to do. There is confusion, helplessness, guilt. Um, and Micah goes on to say, it doesn't understand reverence or worship, but that also doesn't mean it can't learn. And so that brings about two thought processes for me. Um, the first being that, like you said, it's not. I don't think it's expecting anything in return. I don't think it even has the concept of like, I gave you something, now give me something, or like be thankful or whatever. I think it is in a lot of ways just a force of nature that also has like sentience, has wants.
Consciousness. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's like, the wind blows through the windmills and generates power. Like, does the wind expect someone to say thank you? Like, no, that's just a part of the
That's just
world,
how it
right?
works. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think the traveler operates in a similar way where it sees itself as like, I'm just a natural force in this universe doing what my job is. And it expects people to like, they can use that to understand more about the universe around them and allow them to advance with that understanding. But I don't think it has the concept of these people's thinking of it as a thing outside of just a piece of this grand cosmos.
Sure.
Um Now the interesting bit is, Mike is saying, but that doesn't mean it can't learn, or that it isn't still trying to understand us, even if it never will. And I wonder if being met with this worship, with these demands, with these questions, if the traveler did go, well, let me try to puzzle out what you're asking me. But in the traveler's like thought process, it can sit and meditate on a question for literally eternity.
Yeah.
And even if it had the intent, though it does say like, did it have an intent to answer? And Mithrax like, I really can't guess. Um, but if that intent to answer was there, but it was gonna take like 4 billion years for the traveler to be able to conceptualize and then communicate,
Yeah.
like as far as the people asking the question are concerned, like it's just not ever gonna respond.
Yeah. They're like, it's silent. It's silent. Heresy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
uh so yeah, it just it is this it I guess the best way I can think to describe it, of the traveler trying to like come to terms with these ideas, these constructs that these, I want to say lower life forms, but kind of compared to the traveler, are
That's
presenting to
yeah.
it. It's like, to somebody that is colorblind, how do you describe the color blue to them? Like, how do you get them to understand what that is to you?
I mean, the best you can do is like a scientific approach, right? Like the color blue is this wavelength, and wavelengths travel at such and such speed, and it has this much distance between crest to crest. Like you can try, but at the end of the day, like what does blue invoke in you? What does the feeling of blue invoke? Well, I mean, from a scientific point of view, it doesn't evoke anything. It's just science. But like the feeling for me, blue is a good feeling. Like blue and green are my two favorite colors, and so like but why are they my favorite? Like I don't know, they're just pretty. like,
Yeah,
like
but
it's
like trying
that
to
concept. Yeah,
communicate that kind of, that idea to something that does not have any scope of reference for what it is you're talking about.
yeah. Like
Like, yeah,
what is
that,
pretty? I don't know. Things that make me feel good, things that look good to me. Well, what is good? I don't fucking know. Like
yeah, like
but it truly is that level of and again, that point of view of like good and bad. Okay, well that's a morality thing. Morality is a point of view. If I don't have an understanding of good or bad, then how do I describe something without using the terms good or bad?
right. or if something doesn't, again, that it doesn't have a concept of like good or evil. Like that's just not a thing that has ever crossed its mind,
Yeah.
and is maybe to the perspective of the traveler a very small insignificant difference.
Yeah. It's
It
like, who cares if it's good and evil? Does it create or destroy? That's what I want to know.
yeah, like I mean, to try and give another metaphor, to us looking down at an anthill, are there ants within that hill, within that society, that are operating against what is best for the whole colony?
I, I
Maybe.
want to see a
Would we
defector
have a
ant.
way? I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are cases where
There's
this has happened,
this
but
there's this one dude, just one ant just off on the side, like, yeah, they're building tunnels. I'm gonna run around. I'm gonna collapse this shit. Watch this. Watch this. Watch this. And he just runs over, and just starts collapsing shit. And they're like, God damn it, George, will you cut that shit out? And he's just like, ha 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 ha, ha, and runs off.
but to us as the observer that does not have any concept or understanding of how that society works, how that colony works, we would never even be able to pick out which one's the bad one, quote
Yeah,
unquote.
no. We just see like oh, that one collapsed like if we have the little ant farms, they're like, oh, that one just collapsed a tunnel. Maybe they didn't need that one.
Yeah,
But we have no
like
way to communicate with them. Like
right.
we can't be like, hey, dude, George, are you doing that on purpose? And he's over there and like, fuck you, human, like flipping us off and
Oh, but so reel us back in a little bit. But I do think it's fun thought experiments to try and like conceptualize the traveler to us and vice versa.
dude, it's
But
hard.
it is. But we're gonna finish this up, and finish this episode up with the final vision from Mithrax, which is part 3 of this little precursor vision series. So Mithrax says, Guardian, the hooded figures again. Like the chords of a song, I recognize their impression in the light. They starve in new and different ways. When the gardener met their questions with silence, they sought something who would answer back. It's equal and opposite. Micah chimes in, the darkness. This is when the witness's people became the traveler. Now they reach out once more to close their hands around the gardener, to generate the truth for themselves. But it runs. And that's the end of that vision.
Yeah, it's very much a just a retelling of the events that happens. Like they, well, the your idea of like it could take a billion years for this ball in the sky to learn what the idea of worship is, or to try to come up with an answer for them. But on their point of view, they're like, oh, well, it's silent. Well, let's go find something else. And the thing that they happen to find is the veil. And they're like, oh, this thing is giving us answers. Why won't you give us answers? And that starts a downfall and all that jazz.
Now that right there is a very important distinction that I think we need to focus on for a second and try to come to terms with what that really means.
Okay.
So the traveler was silent. So they sought something out that would answer back, implying that the veil talked to them.
Oh shit, dude. So what is that? What the fuck does that mean?
I mean, I think that lends itself as another piece to the puzzle of this entity that is the winnower being something separate from the witness. Because something had to give them the answers they sought.
Oh shit.
or at
Dude, that's
least
just that.
that is what
I mean,
is assumed here.
that it's got to be right. Like I go looking to mom and saying, "Hey, mom, why is the sky blue?" And she just like doesn't know how to answer that. And so I'm like, sit there for 5 minutes, sit there for 20 minutes, sit there for 45 minutes. Okay, bye, mom, and walk off. Go to dad. Hey, dad, why is the sky blue? Well, the sky is blue because the wavelength that the light hits the blah 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 blah, the angle of refraction and blah 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 blah. And I go, neat, I got an answer. And this thing talked back to me. I'm going to listen to this thing. I'm not going to listen to that. Next time mom comes to you, hey, eat your peas. You flip mom off and go, I don't have to listen to you.
That escalated.
That escalated quickly. I know. I don't know where I was going with this, but that idea of like, I wanted an answer. I wanted an answer. Option A didn't give me an answer. I'm going to go to option B. Option B talked to me. Well, okay, well, that means option B is going to give me more answers later on. When option A finally comes back with an answer, I'm going to be like, well, I already got an answer. I don't have to listen to you. Like, you wouldn't give me an answer in the first place. So, again, kind of applying that to the witness's race here and its interactions with the traveler and the veil, you're right. The veil had to have talked back to him. The veil had to have said something to them for them to be like, oh, this thing is talking to us. This thing has the same, and again, light and dark, right? Like one has the energy signatures of light, which we defined as like kind of infinite wavelengths, and then the energy signatures of the dark is the equal and opposite, right? Like negative infinite wavelengths, I guess, if you want to think of it that way.
Yeah.
Well, to see the same power signature, like, oh, well, these things are clearly of the same being, the same whatever, and this thing's giving us answers. Well, I'm just going to talk to this thing more. If I can talk to this thing, cool. I can't talk to that thing, or that thing won't talk back. Like, I can talk to it, but it's not going to talk to me. I'm just going to keep talking to this thing over here. And then again, that idea of like, if it did talk, what was talking through it? Because light and dark are just forces. They're just energy signatures. They're not beings of consciousness. The traveler itself is a being of consciousness and is tied to the light, and now both light and dark. And the veil is a, I hesitate to say being. We know that the veil is part of the traveler. Asa says as much. So maybe it was the consciousness of the traveler. I don't know. Maybe it is more because they got separated now, because it is just pure consciousness. The winnower has more agency over it and can now talk through it more readily. Or maybe there's even that concept of like, what if the gardener and the winnower are the same entity?
Right.
Like
Just
you and
two
I could
pieces
have
of the
of the
same thing. Yeah.
exactly. A gardener doesn't just like let shit grow. It doesn't just like plant a bunch of seeds and walk away and go, cool. It'll come back to it and go, oh, hey, there's weeds growing here. Let me prune these out. Like these weeds are suffocating the things that I want to grow. And maybe that's what it is. The gardener wants to grow something. In this instance, it may not know what it wants to grow, so there are weeds. But it may not know what those weeds are, other than those weeds are stamping out things that it is trying to grow. So then I need to do away with those weeds. Like it again, this is a very metaphorical
Yes.
line of thinking, and it's hard to kind of like nail down to concrete terms. But yeah, like at the end of the day, I think the witness people went to the veil and either heard like they had to have heard something, gotten some sort of answer, and gone, oh, cool, I have answers now. I don't need you, traveler. Like, and then if it is truly the winnower, is now being like, hey, maybe you shouldn't be listening to that thing. Maybe you should be demanding more answers out of it. And then the witness or the traveler going, wait a second, I didn't like, just because I didn't answer you doesn't mean I'm not trying to come up with an answer. And then the traveler seeing the witnesses people evolve through darkness, like, oh, well, that's not what I wanted. Okay, bye, and just
Yeah.
like leaves and is like, well, I'll go find a new garden to try to tend. Like, this thing is clearly being overgrown at a rate that I can't compensate for, or at a rate that's harmful to it. So like, okay, well, I'm just gonna let it be overgrown. Like that's I hate to say that the traveler would look at a species and be like, well, that's a lost cause, and leave. But I mean, hell, maybe that is what it does. Maybe it looks at something and go, well, I can't help you anymore. Bye. Kind of like, I mean, the way it saw with Lubre. Like, it went to Lubre and was like, well, you people aren't even going to try to listen to me. You're just going to like argue over the idea of power and energy. Like, okay, well, you're clearly not reachable. I'm going to go to the next one.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Uh, I think we're getting close at the very least. Like I feel like we may not have enough information to say concretely, okay, this is exactly what happened and you know what the motivations were, but I feel like we're starting to narrow in on it.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, just as more information becomes available in game, hopefully we'll hopefully be able to narrow it further and further until we have a good, clear understanding of like that that is
That. This is
what
the
happened.
traveler's name is Bob, and it just wants to bring peace.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know that's its name now. Googly Eye Bob.
Yep. Yep. But say with that, that is where we're going to end this episode, and that is the end of the like visions of the traveler's memories.
God, this was a fun one. This was, like I said, when Myth and I were doing this, like we're in a fire team and we're like, okay, you inspect it. What message did you get? Oh, I got this. Okay, you inspect it. Oh, I got a repeat. Okay, reset, run back out, run all the way back in. Okay, what message did you get? Oh, I got a new one now. Oh, I did too. Oh shit, that's 7. Fuck, there's more than 6. And as soon as like we got to the there's more than 6, we were like, shit, we got to start writing these down.
Like we got to run this so many times.
Yeah, like we just kept running it until we finally just started getting repeats after repeats after repeats. Like it was a fun little like experiment of like, is this really a thing? Like, are we being shown more memories than we should have been, or like is this tied to something? Or but yeah, so if you're in the cyst and you find those little feathers, it's the one difference that I did find interesting, and this may just be completely uh this may not be anything. This may be like my blue flame myth. Um, the feathers you find out, and Myth understands that. None of you will, but I'll explain it here in a bit. Uh, the feathers you find out in the wild are all standing up. The ones you find in the cyst are all laying down.
Oh,
I always thought
interesting.
that was a neat one. And then the ones in the world that are standing up, they say collect when you get near them. When you get near the ones in the cyst, they say gather, or vice versa. I think the ones out in the world might say gather, and the ones in the cyst say collect, or something like that.
Yeah, just fun little idiosyncrasies. Yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't realize the like standing versus laying down. That's kind of interesting.
I started noticing it when I was helping my wife find some of the feathers, and I realized that everyone she found out in the world was standing up, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then when we started doing our little like back and forth of like, oh, I'm getting this message, oh, I'm getting this message, I kept looking, I'm like, that one's laying down. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Could be nothing. Could be the blue flame of the vault of glass. We're running day 1 vault of glass, and we get to the Gorgon maze, and we're like, oh, well maybe they changed the Gorgon maze, and so like we're going through it, and there's these little blue flames as part of the environment out there, and as soon as you get close to it, they go away because like they're in your vision now or something like that, and then like you turn around, there's blue flames behind you, and I was so convinced that these little blue flames were like, oh, we get to it and it goes out. Okay, we got to find the next one and go to that. And then that's the right path. No, you dumb shit. That's just environmental effects that are turning off as a visual thing once you get near them. You stupid human. Yeah. That's so now anywhere we find someone where like a path, we're like, oh, it's a blue flame. Like this is it.
Hey, it was a good idea. Like we were just trying to
We were
figure
following
out.
it for like 10 minutes too, and everyone was just like, what blue flame? You dumb shit. Crystal somewhere.
uh,
Yeah, that's me.
yeah, but no. So we've got a couple of shout outs here that we're gonna
Yeah. Shout
do.
outs.
Say we still got a little bit of a backlog. We're gonna get through a few of them and have probably finish out our backlog on the next episode. So the first, which I thought was a really interesting idea, comes to us from our Twitter. This is from Austin, who says, "Could the veiled statue in the Garden of Salvation be RS?" Referencing the IntelliKey book, where the two transcripts were between like HN and RS. The message from HN in the final Shape Collector's Edition lore book that Aldrin found on a Vex Minotaur core shows that the message was sent to the Black Garden Garden of Salvation. So what this is in reference to. So first off, thank you for bringing this up because I think this is a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Uh, but for those that haven't seen Entelechy or heard us talk about it in a while, Entelechy is that lore book that came with the collector's edition of Final Shape, and in it are a number of archives that were collected from various places, and a number of those archives are messages sent between two people presumed to be from the precursor race, the race that eventually became the Witness. Uh, those transcripts, those messages, are all between two kind of code names. One is HNW 047622, and the other is RS, and I forget what the numbers are after them. But these
Henry
two,
Winkler and Ray Stantz.
sure, uh, these two are communicating back and forth, and the final communication between them is recovered within the core of a Vex Minotaur within the Black Garden. And this is a core that was brought back by Prince Aldrin. And therefore, this record was kept in the Reef archives until Ido dug it up as part of this Entelechy book. And in that entry, HN is sending a message to RS, essentially indicating that RS has left the system, has like gone missing, and HN is telling them that the separatist groups within the precursors have been put down, and uh, the remaining consensus is ready to become the Witness. And this is kind of the final message from HN being like, I hope I don't forget about you when we meld into this singular thing. So the question being posed is, do we think the statue within the Garden of Salvation is RS, the person this message was intended for? I really I love the pieces that have put together here for this puzzle. I am actually of the opinion that the statue is likely HN. Uh, because we know HN from that Entelechy book, and we have a whole episode on it. I was like not 100% sure about this. They
The
they
idea
they
of the
had
final shape,
some,
like they weren't
yeah.
100% sure about that. Yeah.
It seems like they weren't like zealotlessly like, yes, this is the path, this is the only path, all others are wrong. They were on board, but it seemed like they'd still had some reservations. And so I wonder if if HN eventually became a dissenter, was carved out of the Witness, popped in their little statue. That statue ended up in Garden of Salvation, and then just, as a means of trying to communicate anything, this memory, this memory turned message, like ended up infiltrating the Vex there. And it was a message that HN or that RS never actually got from HN.
I like it. I like that idea the most. I because again, the more we learn about through the campaign about the idea of the dissenters and the statues, and like these are literally consciousnesses that have been cut away and carved out and locked away, um, until they can be integrated into the final shape, until the Witness can determine what their purpose is. Because I feel like to the Witness, all of its precursor races purposes were to just become the Witness, and so anyone that doesn't agree with that to become the Witness and enact the final shape, and so anyone that doesn't in line with that, it doesn't know what to do with them, and so it
Right.
just carves them out and says, okay, I'll section you off, I'll deal with you when I can deal with you, and that's where we come across all these statues. So yeah, I really like that idea of the statue in the garden might possibly be the consciousness of HN, of Henry Winkler. which I just think is hilarious. That the Fonz is just sitting in the Garden of Salvation, like doing Vex stuff. I like it. And that he is sending, he at some point in time he had written this message, possibly, and that's the thing too, is like the more separated from the witness they are, like I feel like they might have become more and more silent.
Yeah.
And the closer they are, the more that they can kind of talk. Like that's why we can kind of talk to the statues in the Pale Heart, but we can't really talk to any statues outside. We just get whispers. Um, I think this could be like a memory of a letter that HN was going to send, like what you were saying, it was going to send to RS, and then like it never got sent. But because that whisper is happening, like that's like the idea of clarity. Like it's talking to the Vex, but the Vex don't really understand it or anything, so they just start worshiping it. And now that part of that message is just in their code now, and that's why it was part of, and specifically the Soul Divisive code, the ones that are in the Black Garden. And so when Uldren brought back the Vex head, like again, whatever information is in there is going to be information to everyone. So yeah, I think you're right. I really do like this idea, but again, the opposite of what they stated here. They were the Austin was thinking that RS was a statue inside. I'm thinking it's the opposite because again, going back to the Entelechy book where Henry was very much on the idea of like I'm not so sure that the final shape is really like all knowing. Like is that something that just can be shown? And RS was like you're starting to talk like a separatist. Like watch that talk there. Um, yeah, I like that. I like it. I
Yeah.
like it a lot.
So thank you for sending that theory in. That is, yeah, I headcanon. I think that that is absolutely HN in that statue, which is kind of cool. So the second shout out and the last one we'll do for this episode comes to us from our Gmail from one Scarlet Shadow. And they say, hey guys, I am so excited to listen to your opinions on everything. I hope your break was great and you are thoroughly enjoying everything about this expansion. I know I am. Honestly, is probably going to be my favorite for a while, but you guys have actively made it way better because I know all these names and stories going into it. Please give yourself a huge gold star because I am truly grateful to you guys for the stories you tell and keep telling, and I'm here for as long as you want to do it. They sent this just after launch, so the PS on it is I don't know if you've seen all the quests yet, so I'll try not to spoil, but Micah 10 and the Ghosts, some amazing stuff that I would love to hear your opinions on. Uh, Best wishes again. I hope you're having an amazing time with Final Shape. So,
Yes, to all of that.
yes.
You beat us to it, but yeah. Well, I don't know if you beat us to it. Like Myth and I like day one happened, and we were just we I think we there were some sessions we played for 12, 15 hours straight.
We were in it.
We were in it. Like I am again since Final Shape launch. I think I've put another 400 hours into Destiny easily. Um, I mean, I was true. Like I'd wake up and I go, okay, I need to play more Destiny. And like lunchtime would come around, I'm like, no, I will hold off on lunch so I can play more Destiny. And then dinner time would come around, my wife would be like, hey, you need to stop playing and eat. And I'm like, no, you need to stop eating and play. Come play, come sit. So yeah, it's I have been in love with the Final Shape. It's like completely like the storytelling, all these little collectibles, all these little like these little bits and pieces that we're finding, and we're getting more and more I guess a greater understanding of the traveler and what its intentions are, what it really is, like what are ghosts, what is our connection with the light, why is the traveler here, what's the deal with the witness? Like we're getting a ton of answers, but we're getting answers in the forms that are like making us ask more questions of like, oh, well, if that's true, let's follow this. Like, what does that mean? So it's very the final shape is very thought provoking, and I fucking love it. It really is. It gets me excited, and it's funny with mechanically with strain and stasis. I had a hard time taking to those. Like I couldn't find the play style that I liked. With prismatic, I've fallen into it really easily. I felt like, or at least easier than I did with those. And so like it took me a while with the warlock. Like I had to kind of like unlearn Warlock to like relearn Prismatic. And then once I did that, like everything just kind of clicked, and my build I have a ton of fun with it. And then like Prismatic on the Hunter, since I had like no preconceived, I didn't really play Hunter a whole lot, so I didn't have a whole lot of preconceived notions of like, oh well, when I do this, this X should happen. I just kind of went into Hunter going, well, I like this melee, I'm putting that on. Oh, I like that dodge, I'm putting that on, and then like piece together something, and it turns out like it's really powerful. It feels really fun to play. So yeah, I hesitate to speak for Myth, but I'm pretty sure he feels the same way. I fucking love this shit.
Yes.
This is, I mean, the raid is, the raid is the raid, man. It has officially topped my raid tier list, and it is my favorite raid now.
Yeah. No, it has been a wonderful, wonderful time to be playing, especially just all the little Easter eggs and tidbits that they had in it about, like, if you know, little pieces of the story that you get that little extra out of.
Yeah. Well, I think that the opposite of that is true. Like, if you come across something like these Mithrax things, you're like, 6-armed people, what the fuck is this thing talking about? And you can start pulling on threads.
Yeah.
You can start being like, well, what does that mean? So, again, their level of storytelling now really is being elevated. It really is getting people more and more involved in the lore, and I love that.
Yeah. So it has been a wonderful time. As far as Micah and the Ghost go, we also freaked out when we first heard all of the dialogues and the different things as you go through the ghost missions. And as far as our more like analytical viewpoint of all that, hey, we just put out some episodes about it.
There you go.
So if you haven't heard those, they're there for you whenever you have the chance. But yeah, so yeah, if you did happen to like what you heard in this episode, and you want to support us in some way, just give us a rating on your platform of choice. That goes a long way. Share with friends that might also be interested in the lore, maybe coming off Final Shape, wanting to dig more into some things. Send them our way. And if you feel strongly enough that you want to leave like a text review or reach out, you can do so at Myths and Stories on Twitter, Gmail, mythsandstories@gmail.com, or YouTube /at Myths and Stories, and may see yourself as a future shout out.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll give 2 thank yous. We already know who one of them is. Wow, we might know who both of them is. One is googly-eyed Bob.
Yes. Yep.
We love you for giving us the light. The other is George the Dissenter Ant. I think of him as a dissenter, or maybe he's like chaotic neutral. Like he's maybe that's what it is. Maybe like the idea of chaotic neutral really is like the epitome of I don't know. But maybe I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know that chaotic neutral can be described as like I don't know.
It's fun. For some.
I would say chaotic neutral is purely selfish. Okay. Is an individual who is only doing things for themselves, regardless of what the rules or traditions are.
All right. Well, then that's definitely George. George is chaotic neutral. He's just running around there collapsing tunnels, and he's just like, "Ha, fuck you."
That may be chaotic evil.
He might be chaotic evil. Like that's
if he's not like, benefiting from it, and he's just doing it to fuck someone else over. That's evil.
That's the question. Like, is he getting something out of it? Like, is it, and is something as simple as like getting joy out of like collapsing tunnels? Is that considered getting something out of it, and therefore elevated to the point of neutral? I don't know. But thank you, George, for being the crazy little ant collapsing all the tunnels. Little shit. I'll find you. The queen will find you. She will kill you. All right. Well, that's it for me. Myth, you got anything else?
That's it.
All righty. Well, then from all of us Lore Daddies to all of you Guardians out there, we'll see you next time.
You found your people. Guardians do love their myths and stories.